This mini lesson is on editing your writing. Welcome, writers. Today, we're going to learn about editing or fixing our writing. The first thing we're going to do is to take a look at this sentence. It says, "We are in first grade." Does that sentence look okay to you? I don't think so. There are plenty of errors in this sentence that we have to fix. Let's look at the first word, we. We know that sentences begin with a capital letter and that W is capitalized. However, the word we is spelled with only one E. Capital W, E is all that we should have, not the additional E. We are in first grade. Well, let's look at that word first. I see that the F, the I, the R, the S, and the T are all spelled with capital letters. We do not do that. So, the F, I, R, S, T needs to be in lowercase letters. So it should say, we are in first grade. Now, it does end with a punctuation mark, and this is a question mark. However, let's think about this. Did this sentence really ask us a question? I don't think this is an asking sentence. This is a statement. Statements end with periods. So this sentence had a lot of errors and needed a lot of fixing. That is what our focus is on today. We're going to focus on editing or fixing our writing. Come along. Now, we're going to talk about the word edit. When I say the word edit, I mean fix. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to edit or fix our writing. Let's take a look at some things that we need to pay attention to as we're writing. We need to pay attention to capitalization. That means we have to capitalize the first word of a sentence. We also have to capitalize any proper nouns that we see inside of a sentence. That is a rule. We must also have proper punctuation. That means we need to make sure that we have our periods in the right places, exclamation marks or exclamation points, and our question marks. We need to make sure that every sentence begins with a capital letter and has ending punctuation. We also need to make sure that there are spaces within our words, and not too much space. There is a such thing as having too much space. We want to make sure that we have just the right amount of space. So what we can do, we can take our fingers and put them in between our words. And we're just going to use what's called a finger space as we're writing. We don't want to use 5 finger spaces because then it's going to be separated and we won't have enough room to write everything that we need. And we also don't want to cram everything together because if we cram it all together and we don't allow finger spaces, it will be very difficult to read, and readers do not want to read something that does not contain spaces. So, one thing that I like to use is called an editing checklist. And that means as you're writing and you finish your first draft, we're going to use this checklist to make sure that we have fixed our sentences. So, with the editing checklist, I like for us to make sure that we have all capital letters where it's needed. So we're going to look for any proper nouns and the beginning of sentences, and we're going to make sure that all of those are capitalized. So that's the first thing that I like to do, is to go back and check over that. And then, after I've checked every sentence to make sure that I have the proper capitalization there, I will go ahead and put a check beside the word capitalization in my checklist, so I know that my paper has capitalization. The next thing that I look for is punctuation, because we don't want to write a long paper and not have any punctuation marks until the very end. I find that a lot of young learners like to wait until the very end to put a punctuation mark. But we do not do that. We do not have we don't have run-on sentences. We have to stop. We have to get to a stopping point. So we'll be looking for periods. And we're not just going to stick a period anywhere. Sometimes we may need to stick an exclamation point or an exclamation mark or a question mark. We need to make sure that we're putting them in the right places and that it matches the sentence. If it's an asking sentence, it must have a question mark. We have to learn that. Also, on our editing checklist, we'll make sure that we have the proper spacing. We don't want just 2 words per line. We want to make sure that our paper has the right amount of spacing, and we also don't want to cram it so that it will be hard for us to see. So, after we check for capitalization on our checklist, we'll check it off that we've made sure that all of our words are capitalized that need to be. After we check for punctuation marks, we will also check that off on our checklist to make sure that we have punctuation where it needs to be, whether it's and we can also use commas as well. We'll also check off for spacing in our checklist to make sure that we're using the proper spacing, 1 finger space, not 5, not 10, just 1. And please make sure that we have a finger space in there and that we didn't just cram our words together. So, we're going to take a look at a piece of writing, and we're going to look at that and see if it would pass our editing checklist or if there are some things that we need to fix. Well, let's take a look at it. Right now it says, North Carolina is in the United States. It has sandy beaches, gorgeous mountains, and nice triad cities. You can go camping or swimming at the beach. You can shop in triad cities. North Carolina is home to the talented Carolina Panthers and Charlotte Hornets. Well, what we need to do, we need to take a look at this because I think there are some things that need to be fixed. First and foremost, we see the words North Carolina. That is the name of a state. That means it's a proper noun. So it has to be capitalized. Not only is it a proper noun, but it's also the beginning of a sentence. So we definitely have to put a capital N and C for North Carolina. It also says that North Carolina is in the United States. That is the name of our country. So we have to capitalize the U in United and the S in States. It has sandy beaches, gorgeous mountains, and nice triad cities. You can go camping or swimming at the beach. Those are a lot of words, but I don't see a lot of punctuation marks there. So we would have to go back and figure out where to put our punctuation marks. Looking at our text, it seems as though we should add a period after it says North Carolina is in the United States. That means our new sentence will begin with the word it. Well, if it starts our brand new sentence, then we know we have to add a capital letter there. It has sandy beaches, there's a comma there, gorgeous mountains, and nice triad cities. It sounds like we're taking a stop there. We're at a stopping point. So that sounds like we need to add another punctuation mark. We're not asking a question. It's not an exciting sentence, so we need to add a period there. You can go camping or swimming at the beach. You can shop in triad cities. North Carolina is home to the talented Carolina Panthers and Charlotte Hornets. There are some more mistakes that are here that would not pass our editing checklist. What I would like for you to do right now is turn and talk to a neighbor. And I would like for you to use an editing checklist, and we're going to check for proper spacing, punctuation, capital letters, and we're also going to check to make sure that our sentences really do make sense and that we don't have any fragments. I would like for you to go with your partner and find some sentences that need correcting. Please go with your partner right now and let's find out what we need to fix. Thank you for going to work with your partner. Now, let's discuss some things that need to be fixed. As you can see, and I noticed some of you pointed out, the sentence where it says, you can go camping or swimming at the beach. Well, that Y in U needs to be capitalized. And some of you also noticed that it does have a punctuation mark. However, it's the wrong one. That is not asking a question. It is a statement. It is telling us something. So we have to end that with a period and not a question mark. You can shop in triad cities. I think a lot of you agree that that sentence was correct. North Carolina is home to the talented Carolina Panthers and Charlotte Hornets. If you take a look at that sentence, you'll see that North Carolina once again needs to be capitalized. That number 2 is in the middle of this writing, but we need to write it as TWO and not put the number 2 in there. That is something that people do when they're sending text messages. I know a lot of you are familiar with your parents, and sometimes you may send a text message. That's okay when we're writing there, but when we're doing our formal writing, we're going to actually write the words the letters TWO. Carolina Panthers and Charlotte Hornets are the name of teams, so they're proper nouns. We have to capitalize those as well. Now, as you've been made aware, great writers check over their work to make sure that they haven't made any mistakes. It's okay for writers to make mistakes. That's why we have these editing checklists. As you are writing, make sure that you're following that checklist and that you're looking for any mistakes. Sometimes we make them and we really don't know that we are. That's why they're called mistakes. Keep writing, and remember, check over your work.